Brinch will take you to the southwestern Baltic, to the Danish island, Lolland-Falster, and I will, as an introduction to a specific presentation of Marie Brinch, with a recently found site, present the framework for the Viking Age finds from our area in time and space. 10-15 years ago, I did a survey of the local Viking Age pottery, the local Baltic ware, and I made a detailed investigation of the known finds and sites from the late Iron Age, Viking Age, and early medieval period. That's a time frame from 700 to 1200 AC on Lolland-Falster and southern Zealand, and tried to investigate the settlement structure in the area. I was focusing on the interaction between the Danes, the Saxon, and the Slavonic people across the western Baltic, and on borders in the coastal landscape. And from the written sources, we have information on dynastic connections across the Baltic and ongoing conflicts. The written sources, the Royal Frankish Annals, Journey of Wulfstan, Adam of Brave, and the Chronicle of Saxo. All in all, almost 1,000 finds and sites could be surveyed from the late Iron Age, Viking Age, and early medieval period. It was finds from national collection campaign surveys and excavations in the 19th and first half of the 20th century. It has been exhibited or stored by the National Museum, while most of the finds from the second half of the 20th century is exhibited or stored at the local museum. All in all, the almost 1,000 sites and finds are with a normal find picture. From the area, we have 12 runic stones. In 2002, there were known 31 hoards and depots from the area, most of them found by farmers during field work or by workers digging gravel pits in the 19th century. A few was found in the 20th century. But now, in the last 10-15 years, in the 21st century, we do have a formally boom in new hoards and new finds from old sites, as for example from Fejø, where the finely ornamented Frankish silver beaker was found in 1872, together with 5 probably locally produced smaller beakers. Just a few weeks ago, another 8 of the small beakers were found at the old site at the island. Then also in the area consists of a large number of strongholds and fortifications, and that might be dated to the period between 700 and 1200. In the early 20th century, there were almost no settlement finds recorded from the area at all. During the last decades of the 20th century, more than 150 settlements have been dated to the period between 700 and 1200, and the number is increasing. Very few Viking Age burial sites have been surveyed and excavated, but we have 34 sites that can be connected with Viking Age and medieval infrastructure like boat finds, fencing, river crossings, and so on. The runic stones on Lolland-Falster mentions the heathen god Thor and the Christian St. Mikkel, and they do mention Gotland and Sweden in the Baltic, and also different words for sailing and warfare are mentioned on the stones. Many of the fortifications have just been surveyed in the 19th and early 20th century and were never probably excavated. Some of the sites connected to the infrastructure and the political landscape are a number of beacons, Bagnehøj, along the coast, and also again only a few has been dated. If we are not considering the bottom marks in the pottery or other traits that can be distinguished one craftsman from the other, the ordinary finds from the settlement and Lolland-Falster is almost identical to the artifacts found across the Baltic in modern Schleswig-Holstein and Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. A number of place names at Lolland-Falster is of Slavonic origin and known from the earliest written sources mentioning the rural settlement from the 13th century at Lolland-Falster. Today, only Tillitse exists as a bigger village. All of the settlements with Slavonic names like Kudice, Benice, Tillitse, Korselice are located on some of the island's very best farmland, and it's to this day intensively used. To have a long story, very short, an explanation of that could be the presence of Slavonic bayleaves on the island as a result of dynastic connections across the Baltic. And now to what we're going to talk about. In the last decades, we have had a lot of new metal detection finds. Those that I show here is some of the old ones. The gold find from, just to show some cases of it, the gold find from the Gunsløv was a single stray find close to the beach on Nord-Falster a long time ago. The silver arm ring is from the northeastern part of Falster. The water hoard with no less than 6 kilos of silver was found in 1835 at the northwestern part of Falster. So of course we had those terrific and nice metal finds. In 2002, an amateur archaeologist discovered 1.3 kilo silver hoard at Dusminde on the southern part of Lolland with about 50 pieces of silver from a fine weapon equipment from the Frankish kingdom close to the Viking Age shore in what is now a reclaimed area of southern Lolland. He was looking for more on a site with a former find of Viking Age silver ring. And that was the framework that I would like to Marie.
Yeah, I've had the honor of actually presenting a bit of a world premiere today. It's a completely new site and it was only found late last year, so it's very preliminary what we have so far. Yeah, for those not that familiar with the area, this is Lolland, and the black spot marks the situation of the find. If we go a little bit closer, this is the town of Holeby on central Lolland, and this is the old village of Gammel Holeby, and so that's why the site is called that. It's located right at the edge of the old Rødby Fjord, which is now drained and fossil. But if we look at this map, we see very clearly that it's actually a very good location for a trading place, or what we find, or think this is. Actually, very far into modern times, it was possible to sail from the sea and right up to this place. The actual site was, as I told you, just found last year by 2 amateur archaeologists doing surveys with their metal detectors, which Anna-Elisabeth told us is very common in our parts right now. There have been no archaeological excavations as such, so all these finds only come from these amateur archaeologists doing these surveys. Anyhow, about 600 finds have been made there so far, and they date from the Roman Iron Age and up until medieval times, and actually we can see a continuity because of the old village of Gammel Holeby and the church belonging to the village, which is from around 1100 and 1200. So actually there is a continuity way up in time and up until recent times with the modern village of Holeby. The finds are quite varied, mostly fittings and fibulas. We have oval brooches and trefoil brooches, but also other kind of fragments of fibulas and different things. It's difficult to see at this point how much of it is actually scrap metal and what is just fragmented because of it's in the plowing soil. But that's something we have to look into. We have dirhams and we have melted silver and melted bronze as well. The provenance of the finds is primarily Nordic, but we also have Anglo-Irish finds, and we also have connections to Europe. One of the more interesting finds here are the weights. That's obviously what indicates the most that this is to do with trade. The weights are, we have at this point 24, and as you can see, they are pretty common weight for Viking Age trading. I made this little graph here to show the spread of or the variety of the different weights. We have most of them are cylindrical weights, and they have all been found in the topsoil. If we look at the spread of them, it's very obvious that most of them are found in this area, which is also where most of the finds have been done in general. There are a few finds in this area as well, but it's much more stray and open. So there is very clearly a concentration of finds on this field, but also along the old village. And according to these two amateur archaeologists, the people who live in the village have found what they called Viking Age coins, whatever they defined by that. But when they did garden work, and obviously that's something that we'll have to look into, and the amateur archaeologists are trying to gain access to the gardens to see how much is actually to be found in that area as well. On this map, I don't know how clearly this is, but I added the black dots, and that's deer hems and deer hem clips and melted bronze and silver. And again, there is a very obvious concentration on this field and in this area. I mean, they walk systematically along this field, so it's quite obvious that there is something here, and in case that at some point we need to go out and make an actual excavation there, we certainly have a place to start in that place. So I just brought a few pictures of some of the items that have also come up, and these are just very few of them. What was the sort of, we have a pile about this big, so this was like rummaging through and what I could find. Most of the items are gilded, and since we are in the process of going through all the finds, these are, as I said, just a very small portions, but as you can see, there are some quite nice finds and with strong connections to Europe. And I quite like this little one with a little animal biting its own tail. Again, if we talk about dating, it's a bit, we haven't really gone into an exact dating, so it's still a very broad period we're working on here. Some of the really nice finds, as you can see, these images are a bit different because we already bragged about them. There is this small mask. It's not bigger than the end of my thumb. And we have obviously this horse, or this fitting from horse equipment, probably something that's been put up here at the horse, Anglo-Irish it's been called, and probably glass, not stone, in the middle, and gilded. And obviously the small figurine here of the goddess Freya, which also hints at some kind of cultic connection at the site. It's quite worn, as you can see, and of course that could be because it's been in the plowing soil, but it could also be because it's actually been worn. But it's also gilded very nicely, and you can see the details of the dress and stuff. It's been gilded quite nicely that way. So if we look at the area on a whole, we have the site here and the old fjord, and this up here is the Gamle Holeby church, and then over here we have the old village of Sellinge. And I don't know how familiar you are with place names in Denmark, but as a rule we say that place names ending in Inge is Viking, or from the Viking Age. And so obviously it's very interesting that we have, That's not true. I'm being corrected.
They are older.
They're older. Okay, but that doesn't make it less interesting. Have to look at it from the positive side.
Yes.
But it's still interesting that we have this place here and we have a place here. It also has material that is older. So there may be a connection, but on the other hand, it's also on the other side of the fjord, so it could also be a completely different place. However, as Anna-Elisabeth was talking about the rune stones, it's quite interesting that where the star is, there's actually been found a rune stone called the Selling Stone, which mentions, and I've had a bit of trouble translating this into English, so it may sound really weird, but this magnate woman called Truso. And she has put up the stone for her husband, who was apparently the strongest man of them all, but nevertheless he was killed in battle. They were apparently mighty enough to actually put up the stone. And of course, this is just a thought, and it's just a little, funny thing to think about. But obviously, it's very tempting to connect this couple and the stone with this site, and it will be very interesting to look into that later on, when first of all the amateur archaeologists have emptied the topsoil and we have the time to dig into the site. So a lot of potential and excitement to come, and I hope that we can present some more results next time, hopefully. So that's it.